those of you who don't know too much about that song, I mean, I've been singing it since I was in grade school. Unlike Trump and others, I know it by heart. And one of the reasons you sang it, because it was a song that became an anthem during the darkest years of the civil rights movement.
Viewer discretion is advised.
I'm sure y'all heard about the civil rights movement, right? You know, when black people all over were fighting for civil rights and equality in this country, where people were being hosed down, had dogs sicked on them, were being beaten with batons and were thrown and incarcerated, in some cases murdered, maimed, etc., simply because we were human beings that thought that we should have the rights and equal rights of every citizen in the United States of America. You remember that? Remember what that movement was about? That's, in its darkest hours, was when it became the national anthem for black people.
Lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven ring. I sing song on your day, be gone, let us march on.
Well, lo and behold, it was sang at the Super Bowl last night in Las Vegas, Nevada by the great Andra Day. And there were numerous people who took umbrage with that. Putting on my glasses again because I want to make sure I read stuff accurately. Kari Lake, remember her? The Trump-backed Republican out of Arizona. Y'all remember who she is? She declined to stand for the quote-unquote Black National Anthem. Colorado's GOP rep Lauren Boebert tweeted her objections, stating, quote, "America only has one national anthem. Why is the NFL trying to divide us by playing multiple? Do football, not wokeness." Okay? But of course, then there was Megyn Kelly. Megyn Kelly is a very popular podcaster who used to work at Fox News. She's a former Fox News host. I've had the pleasure of meeting her on several occasions. She said, quote, tweeted, quote, "The Black National Anthem does not belong at the Super Bowl. We already have a national anthem and it includes everyone." That's what she said. And of course she has her supporters, because there were plenty of people who spoke up on her behalf. And obviously, Kari Lake was one of them. Boebert was another, along with several others, because they felt that the Black National Anthem was, quote, "a manufactured push for segregation." What I'm saying to you, however, Megyn Kelly, I'm only bringing up her name to let you know I've listened to you on many occasions. We run across each other during my visit at Fox News in the past. And respect is obviously something you should require because your body of work is that significant. I get it. But you ain't black. You haven't been marginalized and ostracized and treated in the manner that black people have been treated.
Even those of us who believe we have at least passing knowledge of significant events of our past can come across stories that still shock and amaze us. The events described in David Zucchina's new book make up such a story. In Wilmington's Lies, Zucchina brings a lost history to the surface. When one hears what happened in Wilmington in November 1898, the first reaction is, how did I not know about this? After disrupting an election, armed men swept through the city and killed at least 60 people. Over the next few months, more than 2,000 African Americans fled and never returned to their homes. White supremacists took over the local government, and a city that had had a burgeoning African American middle class, whose members were active participants in civic life, was changed forever. In a recent NPR interview, David Zucchino called what happened in Wilmington, North Carolina in 1898 America's first and only armed overthrow of a legally elected government. David Zucchino called what happened in Wilmington, North Carolina in 1898 America's first and only armed overthrow of a legally elected government.
People in the audience, how many of you had ever heard about the events in this book before you came across the book? Quite a few. That's great. Educated audience. Usually when I go around, particularly around the country, I can't find anyone who's ever heard of it. Even in North Carolina, I can't find people who've heard of it. And I have to admit, I had never heard of this until about 20 years ago. And I went to high school and college in North Carolina, and never heard once from a professor or a teacher about this event, and certainly didn't read it in the history books. I was a freshman many, many years ago at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and I was assigned to a dorm called Morrison Dorm. I had no idea who Morrison was. Somebody said he was a governor. Years later, as I'm researching this book, I find out he's a character in the book. He was one of the leading speakers during the white supremacy campaign of 1898. That led up to the coup and the massacre. When I went to football games on campus, I went to Kenan Stadium. Again, I didn't really know or care who Kenan was. While I'm researching this book, I find out he was William Buck Kenan. He was the commander of a gun crew that went through the city on the day of the coup, shooting down black men. When I graduated from journalism school, my first job was at the News and Observer newspaper, which is in the capital city in Raleigh. And it was founded by a man named Josephus Daniels. And while I worked at the paper, there were all these tributes to Josephus in the newsroom as this great journalist, and he was a diplomat. He had been Secretary of the Navy, this just wonderful crusading journalist. No one in the 5 years I worked there ever mentioned that he was the leader of the white supremacy campaign in 1898. Led the propaganda campaign for it. Led the propaganda campaign for it. Led the propaganda campaign for it. In fact, today, if you go on the UNC campus, the student stores are named the Josephus Daniels Student Stores. White supremacists overthrew a multiracial government in the port city of Wilmington on the North Carolina coast, which at the time was the biggest city in North Carolina. They killed at least 60 black men and wounded dozens more. They burned down the black newspaper. They evicted city leaders at gunpoint, and they appointed themselves, the mob leaders, as mayor, police chief, sheriff, and city alderman. And they banished the black men they didn't kill, the black leaders, the lawyers and the doctors and the politicians. They put them on a banishment list, along with white Republicans who had cooperated with black leadership. They marched them at gunpoint to the train station, put them on the train, and said, if you ever come back to Wilmington again, we will shoot you on sight. And not one of those people ever returned. Now you can.
But I digress. My point is as a woman, I am certainly not qualified to speak to your plight and your challenges and the manner of things that you've had to overcome. Although You are a white woman, and everybody knows when you talk about stuff like affirmative action, the biggest beneficiaries of affirmative action have been white women. Not that that qualifies with you. I'm just saying. I'm using that point to highlight no matter what it is that you've been through, I'm willing to bet it's nothing compared to what black people have gone through.
Why America Really Hates the Black National Anthem, Part 2. Here we go again. The original poem over 120 years ago that would later be adopted as the Black National Anthem was really a soft prophetic warning of the downfall of this two-faced nation. Had the leaders of America acted on this prophetic poem back then, truly understanding the pain that gave birth to it, it would never have had to become an anthem. We would be glad to only have one anthem, but America got worse ever since that poem was written, particularly during the dark war years from the late 1910s to the late 1940s. Now, I respect Stephen A. Smith bringing attention to the tone-deaf outrage against the singing of the Black National Anthem at the Super Bowl not too long ago. Because of who he works for and the diverse audience he serves, he had to appear balanced in his criticism of those who have been dismissive in their anger, who have this anger. However, he then scolded our community because there are too many of us who claim racism without evidence. He was specifically addressing those of us who were outraged at Megyn Kelly, a former Fox News journalist who is now a conservative podcaster and show host on Sirius XM, and a longtime acquaintance of Stephen A. Smith. He was brave enough to defend her, though I'm sure many in our community took umbrage to that. But that's not that big a deal. Though I certainly agree many of us sometimes do cry racism too much, too loosely in a way that diminishes the power, I find the tone-deaf dismissiveness of our horrific history to be more problematic. We wouldn't have so many who holler racism if our people weren't destroyed by those who use the full weight of the government and big business to crush us after stealing our labor and properties. Which is worse, crying racism with no violence, or being racist and destroying properties and lives, never restoring any of those horrors? I think wiser people know the answer. Now, before I continue, this post is not written in a spirit of anger at all, but in a calm, rational, and rightful indignation. No one is saying that every non-black person who hates the Black National Anthem is racist. At best, many are just woefully ignorant of what really happened to us in history. At worst, some of them are truly hateful of us simply because of the color of our skin, and the nerve of us to continue to seek financial justice for what happened to us. To expect us to make the distinction is a tall order, but we'll do it anyway. I find it rather peculiar that it's acceptable if a white man declares a national anthem, but it's disgusting if a black man declares one. It's okay if they do it, but it's a problem if I do it, as the song goes. You know the song. For those who hate this anthem, did you know that the federal, state, and local government bodies were actively involved in keeping us as a permanent underclass after so-called slavery ended? Did you know that we never got reparations? They never gave it to us. Our median incomes and net worth have remained relatively flat ever since. After being quote-unquote freed, which is debatable, of course, we were just tossed to the streets with no income or savings. And they deliberately kept us in that state, even when we tried to pull ourselves up. What kind of sick society thinks a people can recover from anything like that? Did you know that the government was either a silent or active partner in supporting Jim Crow terrorism and destruction of our Black Wall Street cities around the country from the 1860s till about the 1960s? Did you know that our median incomes and net worth have been suppressed by design ever since the 1860s? Did you know that between 1880 and 1925 thereabout, we actually built an infrastructure against all odds that could have restored our generational wealth? But the federal, state, and local governments systematically supported and silently endorsed the destruction of our efforts, and even encouraged the racist violence against us, against our people, to keep us, quote unquote, in our place. This country basically gave us the middle finger and told us to get over it. You're free now. You're equal now, despite never, ever restoring what they destroyed. That's gaslighting at its worst. So, the anger against the Black National Anthem means nothing if you didn't know all of this, and if you don't do your part to restore what was taken from us. If all of those who hate the Black National Anthem would learn and act on the truth of what really happened to the Black Wall Street in Tulsa and elsewhere around the country, and understand that we never got financially restored and our owed overdue reparations, then we'll keep the Black National Anthem to ourselves if that happens. Otherwise, it's going to stay there. Now, I'm warning you, a friendly warning, Babylon is falling right now. United States of America, because America never atoned for its past horrors against our community. Most Americans not only are ignorant of Black history, but also the dark history of all the wars in the 1900s that were directly or indirectly engineered by America. By this country's own principles of macroeconomics, the nation's elite said a healthy economy has to always maintain a 5% unemployment rate so that they could suppress wages. Now, guess who they chose to be the sacrificial lambs to this love of money of theirs? You guessed it. It is no accident that our people have been kept in these economic doldrums perpetually. But now, the powerful demons who created this system are circling like vultures to destroy it and give power to the Far East. As of this post, our borders are being quietly invaded by sleeper cell agents from the East, not Latin Americans. Do you not think this is a divine justice against this country, the most horrific massacre machine mankind ever created? A nightmare will unfold here once the transfer of power to the East is complete. If only America the beautiful, as you say, would repent, get on its knees, and do right by those who it victimized in the most cruel way, then it can avoid this dreadful fate. But as we see with how utterly dismissive America was regarding the simple singing of a harmless anthem at the Super Bowl, it is a stiff-necked, ignorant, and heartless society, both left and right, liberal and conservative. So its downfall is locked in, just like her ignorance of its true history is locked into them. Take care.